This April, we took a trip to the Elizabeth Township Historical Society in Boston, Pennsylvania, for a day of drills for the Blue and Gray Civil War Reenacting Brigade. On hand was Edward Falvo, with his impressive collection of 19th century medicine and utensils that range from the days of Lewis and Clark to the American Civil War. One could spend hours diving into the medicine of the past. This is just some of what was discussed.
Especially in the time of Lewis and Clark, but still in use during the Civil War time, Dr. Benjamin Rush was the most prominent physician in the country in the Lewis and Clark days, and they were still using his theories in the Civil War. Yeah, he was very well known. He was friends with Ben Franklin, signed the Constitution. This is one of his most famous remedies, Dr. Rush's Bilious pills. They're made with a mixture of mercury, mercurous chloride, calomel, that's copperas, calomel, and jalap, which is a plant root, and held together with breadcrumbs as a binding agent. If you were given one of Dr. Rush's pills, you'd have to hurry to the bathroom, because in less than 10 minutes you'd be cleared out to the extent that just liquid would be left coming out of you. They wanted to get all the bad stuff out of you to make you sick. Also, to make you go to the bathroom, they had saltpeter, and if they're out of saltpeter, they can give you gunpowder. Saltpeter is one of the ingredients in gunpowder, so it works the same way.
Didn't they always say, like in the army in the old days, they put saltpeter in their boots so you wouldn't have
Yeah, more so the Navy,
Yeah.
because they did, when they were all trapped on the ship, they didn't want Navy sailors to have to get pestered by other Navy sailors. So they say that does have that effect, but that's not why it was used in this case. It does make you go to the bathroom. Just like flowers of sulfur, which then mixed with pulverized cream of tartar. Because, like if guys are sick and have dysentery and diarrhea, the thought would be there's something in your intestines that's bothering you, so flush it out and get rid of it, whatever's bad. They still, by the Civil War, there were a couple doctors that were talking about ideas of germ theories, but they were pretty much laughed out of the business. I mean, imagine if someone came up to you and said that right now your body is crawling with little scary monsters that you can't see, but they're there trying to get inside you and make you sick. Does that sound plausible at all?
No.
Like if I told you that right now there are little microscopic spiders that live at the bases of your eyelashes and eat your dead skin cells. Does that sound believable?
According to someone's science, believable.
If you want something to see something that will keep you up at night, look on the internet. I think they're called cilia mites or something like that, and look at what they look like under magnification and realize that's what lives in your eyelashes. If you really want to get scared, look up under magnification what lives inside your pillow. I think it's after you've had a pillow, 5 years, 10 years, 70% of the weight of the pillow after that many years is dust mites and their waste products.
Wow.
Right, I can tell you that, yeah.
Now, the main medical thought back then was that in order to stay healthy, you had to have a balance of the four humors of the body. The four humors are blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If there was an imbalance in the four humors, or there were bad humors in you, you have to get them out. So if you were sick, they'd take a bleeding ball, put it up to your arm, and then take a fleam, make an incision, and all that sick diseased blood would flow out of your arm into the bowl, ridding your body of all those bad humors. Now the reason they use a bleeding bowl is so they could determine how much blood they're taking out. Because if you're just a little sick, they take a little bit of blood. If you're really sick, they take a lot of blood. Back then they believed there were 12 quarts of blood in the body, so you didn't think much of just taking out 4 or 5 quarts.
Well, I know that's what they did to George Washington.
Yeah, I was saying earlier.
That might have contributed to actually his...
When George Washington was sick before he died, they treated him by bleeding him a pint of blood an hour for 11 hours, but he still died. Now, that was in 1798, so he'd be a goner by now anyway, so...
And then if you got caught with both.
Well, first, another tool they had was a cupping glass. They'd heat this up till it was really hot and put it on your body. As air inside cooled, it would create a vacuum and draw the bad humors out into a blister or a boil. Then take a cutting instrument, make a happy little incision, all the bad humors would flow out of you that way. finally, they had epipastric unguent. This is made from a mixture of dried beetles.
That's one you don't want to touch.
Now, these beetles are a natural irritant, so that slather some of this on your skin, put a piece of patent lint over it to hold it in place. In a day or two, it would draw a blister, and when the blister popped, all the bad humors would leave you that way.
And that's real in there. That's not just...
Well, I mean,
plants.
anything that has contents is actual plant or chemical ingredient, but this actually comes from a crockery jar from the 1800s. Well, just like the pulverized asafoetic that I was letting you guys smell, that's from the 1800s too. Well, like my nutmegs are from the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
They used nutmegs to flavor bad tasting medicines.
Thank you.
They put bear grease on their bodies to keep mosquitoes from biting them.
Yeah, I know, like Native Americans would often rub greases on their bodies for that sort of reason.
Bear grease or bear oil. You could always just barely tell them apart. Yeah, you have to really bear with me some of these jokes, otherwise they become too unbearable. And you have to just grin and bear it. Hey, would one of you like to volunteer for a little demonstration? Since he's
All
filming.
you have to do is hold on.
All right, I'll volunteer.
Okay. Hey, they might want to watch this. Okay.
You want to watch this?
Now let's say you were in battle and you got shot. You had a bullet in you. So first you have to find the bullet.
Yeah, like a...
So you take a probe, you probe around in the hole till you find the bullet. You know that's what killed Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah,
The gunshot itself didn't kill him. It was probing for the bullet.
the guy stuck his finger into Lincoln's head, yeah.
Into his brain.
Yeah.
Once you find the bullet, you have to get it out. So you take extractors, go in there to find the bullet, grab onto the bullet, and pull the bullet out. So, now, incidentally, this is if you're in a situation like we are now, where it's not under the heat of battle and the surgeon has time to operate on you the way he needs to. This isn't just like a Gettysburg situation where they have the know-how to try to save the limb, but they don't have the time, the luxury of time to do it. So you get the bullet up, you still have a hole in your arm. So you take a cauterization iron, which is like a metal rod with a pointy bit at the end.
Okay.
You heat it in the fire till it's white hot, and then you'd seal the bullet wound closed with heat. Sizzle, 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 sizzle. At that point, they'd tell you to come back in a couple days, see if it's infected. Most likely it would get infected, so then we get to operate. Now, before they operate, there are some pain medicines. There was they're empty bottles anyway. Whiskey, rectified spirits, and wine. But for something like an amputation that's long and drawn out pain, they'd bring out the good stuff, laudanum. Laudanum is a mixture of whiskey and opium. With just a couple drops of this, you wouldn't care what I chopped off. It'd give you laudanum, you'd be all laudanumed up, you'd be happy. You'd be like, ooh, look at the bunnies. Yes, that's right. So, first they take a tourniquet. They'd strap the tourniquet on. Of course, I'm not really going to tighten the screw and cut off his blood flow. Next, you take the capital knife and cut through all the flesh and muscle down to the bone, making a nice clean cut. Next, they take two leather straps, put one above the cut and one below the cut, and two guys pull in opposite directions, pulling all the flesh and muscle out of the way, exposing the bone. That gives you room to work. You see, so you pull the flesh and muscle out of the way. Once that's out of the way, use the bone saw and you saw all the way through. They know something's happening. Someone's getting body parts chopped off, huh? Yep. Then you take all that off, throw it away so you don't need it anymore. Next, you take a tenaculum, which is a metal hook, and you use that to hook the arteries so you could pull them out in order to tie them off. Otherwise, as soon as you take the tourniquet off, blood would start spurting and squirting all over the place. You'd be slipping in it, it'd be a big mess. Also, you'd bleed to death. It's very irksome when you bleed to death. It ruins your day. Also makes it superfluous to have amputated, because if you're going to bleed to death anyway, why go to all the trouble wasting the laudanum? It'd be faster to just shoot you in the head and be done with it. So if you're going to go to all that trouble, you might as well see you survive the operation. So you tie off the arteries and then cauterize the capillaries with a flat cauterization iron. Finally, if you're a good doctor, you leave a little flap of skin at the end. Why do you think you do that?
Isn't it so you can fold it and sew it at the end?
So you have something to fold over the bones so you don't
Yeah.
have your bones sticking out and all your friends start calling you stumpy. So you take your needles and linen thread and sew you up, and then you're done. Now, the kind of thread they had actually, you know, you were better off getting treated by a Confederate doctor versus a Union doctor for an amputation and surgery.
Isn't it because they used like horsehair?
That's right.
Is the sewing?
The Union surgeons had linen thread to sew you up with, and so they would just take it and sew you up. The Confederate doctors didn't have the supplies, so they would use horsehair. But the horsehair was stiff. It wasn't malleable enough to sew with, so they would boil it to make it softer, but unbeknownst to them, they were sterilizing it.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't know why it worked better. They just knew that if you were treated by a Confederate doctor when you were getting sewn up, less infection. At least be glad you weren't in the English Navy in the 1500s.
Oh.
Then they would just take the stump and dip it in a pot of molten tar to seal it all up.
Oh man.